to Cloud and Clear, the podcast by SADA for innovative business leaders and technology enthusiasts, where we explore how Google Cloud is transforming the industry and what that means to you. Now here's your host, Tony Safoian.
All right, I'd like to welcome to Cloud and Clear a very special guest today, the newly minted head of sales for Google Maps platform in Americas, my good friend. We've known each other for a long time, Francisco Irao. Welcome to Cloud and Clear.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. I appreciate that. And I'm excited to be here and spend some time with you. And congratulations on your success last year as well. And it's been amazing to watch you and the company grow and the relationship that you has continued to grow within Google. So congratulations on that.
Our relationship, our friendship, our business together has been a huge part of our growth story. We would not be here where we are today in our overall Google relationship. It was not for what we broke new ground on together, in the early sort of 2010s, starting back then on the map side. So we've been through a lot together. We've seen a lot, and I think coming out of the QBR that we just had, this is great to have you in our headquarters as a result. But I think it's a good time to sit down and talk about some of the topics because I feel more energized than ever. Just met Chip,
Yes.
and he's going to be a great leader, obviously for the sales kind of globally. It was great to kind of launch 2020 with a very specific focus, a bigger team on your side, a new approach, a new structure on our side, and I'm very hopeful for the future together as well. Let's talk a little bit about your career, your overall career and your career at Google. So many new people have joined Google and Google Cloud that it's just kind of crazy what's happened in the last decade. But famously meeting you, I remember you're one of the few pre-IPO Googlers.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
So you've been there a long time.
Yes, I have. I actually started September 2002 was when my start date was, September 16, 2002 to be exact. And so when I started at Google, we were in one building in Mountain View, and there was roughly 500 people at the time.
Wow.
The entire company, of which about half of them were in Mountain View. So yeah, it was an amazing time to join, and not only the opportunity and the growth of Google to eventually become a $1 trillion business or market cap, but also just the ability to interact with so many amazing people at that time, and that continues today. But with regards to having finance, sales, marketing, engineering all under one roof like that was incredibly rewarding, and what an amazing learning experience. So
500 to what, 120,000, 150,000? I don't know what the number is now, but holy cow, very few people ever get to experience the kind of growth that you have seen in what is now, and it wasn't clear in 2002, but what is now like one of the most storied organizations ever in the history of time, right? Like not just obviously what you do in Maps or Maps and Cloud, but just Google. What a story.
Yeah, it has been amazing. And at the time when I started, I left a company that was pretty successful in its own right, but nowhere near obviously what Google is. But at the time, people were questioning my decision because they didn't know. They hadn't heard about Google. They didn't know about the model, the opportunities. Frankly, I didn't either. I was taking a bit of a flyer in that regard. But then, obviously, it turned out pretty well.
Good decision.
I can't complain. And it's been an amazing just journey. And I recall during that time, we just had one product, which was search, right? And I joined Google as it was just starting their enterprise business, and we only had one product at the time. It was the GSA, Google Search Appliance, you're familiar with. And so I joined a sales team that there was myself and 4 other folks on that team selling the Search Appliance. And it was an interesting story, in fact, in how it came about in that the Search Appliance, or the ability for companies to do intranet and search on their own content, there was a hole there. In fact, when they wanted to find information, they would go to google.com to find it on their site. And so one of our largest customers, advertising customers at the time, approached Google and said, would you be open to using your technology to index our internal pages, our internal documents, et cetera? And so that was how it was born.
Wow.
It was Google's advertising customers who came to Google and asked for that functionality. And so late 2001 is when we launched the search appliance and began our enterprise story around Google.
Yeah, Mark Flessel and company. Mark's, obviously now leading cloud search, and that was the first thing we signed up for as a Google partner to do in 2006. Right. And that was a flyer for us. Like, it cost $10,000 to join this partnership, which, like, the Microsoft partnership was like $500, right? And obviously it was $10K because you got a box. So that was part of the cost. And then that was the first interaction we had with Google in the enterprise. And obviously that was an amazing bet. I don't think any of us could have figured what it would turn into for us, but that was Google's first enterprise product.
Yes, exactly.
So what'd you do right after that? Like, how did your career internally evolve? From
so
search?
As amazing Google as a company is, I recall, I was involved in the search appliance. In fact, I worked for Mark for a bit of time, and I was in the search appliance sales business for about 3 years, and then we acquired a company called Keyhole at the time.
I remember Keyhole.
Yeah, and Keyhole then became Google Earth, right? We rebranded it after Google acquired it, and so I remember this day is we have, which we still do today, is the TGIF, where the company gets together to talk about business, et cetera, what happened during that week. And for that particular TGIF, it was they were demoing the Keyhole product.
Yeah.
And it just blew everyone's mind, to be able to start from space and then zoom in pretty much very clean surface where we zoomed in and saw the Google headquarters in Mountain View, and it was amazing, like this satellite imagery that popped up, and it was very seamless in the way it interacted, and it just blew my mind. I'm like, I need to be able to get involved in that product somehow, et cetera. So we were started to staff that team, and in true Google fashion, like I didn't even know how to spell GIS, right? And I had no relevant experience, but because of that, I was involved with Google and I had a successful track record, et cetera. They considered me for a role there, selling the Google Earth Enterprise product. And that's how I started. I switched from the search appliance product to selling Google Earth and Google Earth Enterprise. So I did that for about 3 or 4 years, and it was amazing. And we sold it to hundreds, if not thousands, of companies globally. About 3 years later or so, then we started up another division, which was Google Checkout and Analytics. Yeah. So I got involved. I moved over to the ads team, specifically around Google Checkout and Analytics. So that was, my next incarnation within Google. And then 2 years later, roughly, then I joined the Geo team, again selling Google Maps and Google Earth. So
in parallel to the Keyhole acquisition, Google's famous for kind of redefining the Maps user experience.
Yes.
So this Google Maps team, I think, was in Australia, right? They're working on this new product. And
yes.
I remember the first time, and back then it was just sort of MapQuest and these other products, but like you could zoom and pan and kind of have this amazing high fidelity experience. And then it became like the default overnight.
Right.
It was amazing. Like nobody would be like, using MapQuest anymore or printing MapQuest maps. I remember doing that.
Yes.
The last Thomas guide I bought was from Costco in 1997. I remember that.
Yeah.
So Google redefined that whole experience in driving and route planning on a consumer basis. But then when did this the Google Maps team? When was the incarnation of that into like the enterprise space, like Keyhole was? When did that happen?
Yeah, absolutely. Like so, we when we acquired Keyhole, they had a product, a subscription-based model that they sold. And so they had a B2B product at the time. And when we acquired it, Sergey and Larry, actually, interesting story is Sergey actually saw this at a trade show, saw the Keyhole technology and was enamored by it. And he's like, this is amazing. This is really revolutionary and changes the way. So it's amazing that he actually had the foresight to be able to say, I want to be able to empower that technology for the masses, et cetera. And it also had a B2B component, to your point, as well. It had an enterprise product that they were selling. So the acquisition is really around changing the dynamics of how you interact with the map, to your point, and the ability and still to this day, if you look at applications and different implementations, it's not the seamless interaction that you get with Google Earth, right? And true. Google Maps. In the past, it was very GIS centric. People didn't understand when you talk about cartography back in the day, how do you interact with that technology? How do you interact with the map, let alone satellite imagery and street view and all the things that have come as a result? So it was really a game changer, if you will.
You had to literally be a GIS major with like a PhD or a master's degree to be able to make sense of spatial data, and Google democratized that almost immediately. And, we demoed some of the stuff that we built based on that and now deliver it to government customers and major enterprise customers.
Right.
Like they had specialized teams, and there's only like 3 or 4 people that could use these crazy old apps to make business decisions. Mm-hmm. And now we have places like in Chicago and Seattle and others and what we've built on top of maps that hundreds of people can use because it actually just behaves like Google Maps.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that you're spot on. It's like the ability to be able to interact with a map and put relevant data, like the application that you're referring to. And there's many examples of this from the business standpoint, right? Like to be able to have a base map or a satellite image and then overlay that on top of it, infrastructure information like for cities, like what you're doing with dot maps. And there's some really amazing applications around that. Like one of our customers is the state of Texas, where they do evacuations for natural disasters. When for example, like a natural disaster is coming and they know it's coming, they'll overlay on top of it the infrastructure around the freeways, streets, evacuation routes, et cetera, and actually allow the citizens of Texas to be able to determine the right path and the most efficient path for. So there's so many different applications that we've essentially enabled as a result of being able to have an application that's scalable and then also overlay on top of it relevant data, which is it's just a phenomenal story, and it's something that I'm personally proud about being involved in because it impacts so many lives.
I think not only Sergey or Larry could have predicted maybe the proliferation of the mobile devices, mobile location, the importance of location, completely new business models that never existed. I mean, some of our joint customers, the biggest joint customers, didn't exist 5 years ago, right? Or 10 years ago. And I remember as, we started with enterprise search, we were a launch partner for G Suite. In the early 2010s, I think 2011, 2012, I was seeing, we knew each other from like the search days, and then, Jay and Monik from the G Suite days who were now running maps. And I was like, what's going on in maps and enterprise, right? Like clearly this is valuable data. Clearly, if a business cares about routing and coordination data and location data, and so many businesses started to, then Google's like the best option, right? And there was other options. There was Bing, there's other things that businesses could use, but like nobody had the data fidelity and the accuracy that Google had, and even back then. So I remember knocking on the door for like months, and with Mike Lee and those original sellers, and then Paul Souza, and saying like, and with you, and saying like, what's the partner play? Like we partner closely on search and closely on G Suite. What's the partner play? And I think we were fortunate enough to, timing wise, for like that was the beginning of when your organization was starting to think about channel,
right?
Think about the partner role. Think about the value proposition that partners could bring to the table. But, and I've talked about this in the past, like it's not easy to transition a very direct business that has massive amount of demand already.
Right.
And have the foresight to say, look, we have this demand now, and most of our customers are super technically savvy. They do their own integration and they do their own whatever. For you to have the foresight, and with Rosemary and Paul Safoian, like that whole crew of like
Right.
with Monik and Jay with their full support to be like, actually, we're going to start to build something that's channel centric. And we were just so fortunate to break new ground there with you. And you had a few partners, but they were hardcore GIS partners.
Right.
They weren't partners like SADA. They were more kind of cloud IT services consultancies. And what led you to support a model in a time where, like you've always been in this business, just super successful with tons of revenue growth? What made you want to pivot to also include partners and channel as part of your strategy?
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is, like any business, where you have to determine where you apply your resources. And, Google, at the end of the day, is very much an engineering-driven company, and we have resources where we want to apply to provide the next functionality. Like at the time, Street View, for example, wasn't there, and other other features, other technology that we wanted to be able to leverage, right? And so, looking at the business and where we invest our resources, we made a conscientious decision to apply our resources on the engineering product to continue to develop and acquire additional data sources, acquire additional information that would enhance our solution and enhance our offering. And so, that there's a trade-off there, right? And you make that decision. So how do you continue to get 20, 30, 40% growth?
Right.
We consciously decided that we wanted to go the route of partners to be able to fulfill that increase in that demand. And to your point, we had other GIS sort of partners involved in it, and there wasn't really, it's an API at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so there's not a lot of implementation deployment. It's a pretty straightforward implementation process, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we really needed to focus on partners who would focus on being a trusted advisor, being a solution, being able to look at the problem and come up with business reasons or business decisions that they could utilize, that these customers can utilize. And that's why I think why SADA has been so successful in the map space, because they don't look at it from just standpoint of reselling of a license,
Right.
but really as a trusted advisor, really as part of a team for the customer.
Yeah, look, if our intention was to just go in there and take orders, that wasn't going to add much value. So we learned very quickly how to ask the right probing questions to the customers about use cases,
Right.
About their business outcomes they were trying to achieve, so that, back then, like a 10K typical easy purchase like actually became 50K and all of that. And I think over time, by the way, with a lot of coaching from you and from our partner team, a lot of very direct, and I love what Chip said about like radical candor and all of that.
Right.
Our partnership back then, I think, was the model across Google of what's possible when there's a lot of trust, a lot of direct communication. You just told us exactly what we were doing well and not doing well,
Right.
and exactly what you expected in terms of investment and ROI. And we respond well in that environment because culturally we're attuned to that. Like, just be direct. Like, tell us what to do.
Yeah.
We'll do it. And if we can't, we'll say we can't, and we can debate, right? But it was very direct and transparent. It was extremely enterprise class. And obviously, we listened well, we made the right investments, we got lucky. There's always luck involved, but it was just an amazing story of how we then became much larger all of a sudden in terms of revenue to Google, much larger in terms of the first massive enterprise customers, like logos that Fortune 100 were Maps customers for us. even before we were doing enterprise G Suite, before we were doing enterprise GCP work, that was very, I think, rewarding to be able to point to a NASCAR looking slide and like, look at all those Maps customers. We saw them, some of them today, which we still have, which we love.
Yeah.
And it became literally, it put us on the map nationally. It was our fastest growing business ever. And it was the first time we were recognized by Google for an achievement that was global, like becoming the global partner of the year.
Right.
Like we won other regional awards and other things, but nothing at that sort of global level of recognition. And that was like crazy, amazing time. But you know, all things change. Part of, I think, what's made us successful in our partnership with Google, but has made you successful, is like existential flexibility. Like pricing models are going to change, products going to change, leadership's going to change up and around you,
right,
and around us in terms of how Google manages us and how they look at our relationship holistically. And that's been kind of the mantra the last 2 or 3 years. Do you want to talk about the changes that the Google Maps organization has undergone, both strategically and structurally, for the audience? I think that's really interesting. It's not a story that's broadly known.
Yeah, I'm happy to cover that. Just to tie off on the point, I think that SADA, Chip had mentioned this earlier today around trust, transparency, and radical candor. Those are the three kind of guiding principles that he has for partners. And you guys have lived that even without, Chip just reinforced it today and continues to reinforce it within our partner
That's how
ecosystem.
we know Chip's going to be great in this role, and that him and I personally are going to get along really well, and he's going to appreciate SADA's, because he said that completely. Like there was no setup for what he said.
Yeah,
that's just him being himself.
Yeah,
and I'm sure you appreciate working for. Yeah,
absolutely,
like that as well.
I do, and it's something that just reinforces the relationship that SADA and Google has had throughout the years, because that's what the relationship is founded upon, right?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to tie off on that. But with regards to just the changes, and this is another thing in terms of how successful SADA has been, is they understand Google and the changes that we have, and we're in a unique position to be able to make some very difficult decisions that may impact revenue in the short term. But because we're able to do that, we've pivoted our business to be more customer centric, sorry, and to be able to modify our pricing model, et cetera. We just went through a major change where we pivoted thousands of customers, and SADA has been the tip of the spear for a lot of that, because they're engaging with our customers directly, where we moved from a prepay model to a postpay. And ultimately, that's actually, it benefits the customer ultimately, right? Like be able to not to have to worry about what the initial cost is, or trying to estimate the usage over a course of 1 year. All those sorts of things are not value selling per se, and it's not talking about the solution and allowing customers to be able to utilize the technology and then try it out and see and allow the product to grow as the consumption and usage grows.
Yeah.
So that was a significant change, and we've talked about that. This is something that we've been planning for years and years, last 2 years, in fact. And so we just completed this migration.
Look, we've gone, through so many different product strategy iterations, product deprecations, and things like that, all sorts of changes that impact us, our revenue, our customers. To me, that was the most well planned for and the most well executed joint strategy in a very tough moment. Like it's very tough to go to customers and say, hey, the pricing model's changed. This is how you have to pay us now. By the way, your price may go up, or by the way, this may not work for you anymore, right? Because you're grandfathered into something that doesn't even exist. Like you're really kind of taking advantage of the toss or whatever,
right,
in terms of service. So those are very tough conversations, but obviously I have a great team. I'm so proud of them, the way they executed it, like
incredible
a machine.
Yeah.
We always try to be as good as Google would do it. Like what would Google's own expectations be? Like we want to do at least that good of a job. But man, that was so well done. It could have been a disaster.
Definitely.
Frankly, other, when like Postini went away or Drive became free for education. There's all these things like that weren't great for customers, but we made definitely, lemonade out of lemons, and that was a great test to the partnership, but also to our team and our relationship with our customers, our ability to execute on tough things, and that alignment just really landed.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like, we again point to the guiding principles of trust as part of that. And you trusted us. We met several times before we started on this journey with regards to migrating these customers, and a lot of it is a leap of faith, right? Like, trust us, Tony. We're gonna migrate these customers. You as a partner are going to be fine in the long run. Our customers are going to be better off as a result. And there wasn't a lot of metrics or data that was pointing to that. There's a lot of it was a leap of faith and trust in our relationship, and doing what's best for the partner and what's best for the customer, and ultimately what's best for Google. And so, you took that journey with us, and, here we are today.
Look, at the end of the day, the numbers tell the story. And in the world of consumption economics, which Maps now is very much like cloud is like Maps.
Yes.
You consume more, you pay more. You consume less, you pay less. The fact that revenues went up meant that we not only transitioned customers successfully, but as they saw more value in the platform, their consumption went up. And of course, they became more successful in what they do, especially in these new economy kind of businesses. Their businesses grew, but also the value that Google Maps added grew, because they could have switched and said, you know what, I'm going to use something else. There are options out there, even though Google's by far the best. There's still options, keeps us on our toes. But right. I think the numbers told the story, and we reviewed some of them today. And I think even I was surprised about like how much that grew.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. It's a testimony to you and the team, and staying connected in terms of the whole process that we've gone through. And we as we look forward into 2020, I mean, the opportunities are ginormous in terms of like the ability for us to unlock, because we've made that split, that change, that shift in our philosophy and our pricing model. It really opens up a lot of new opportunities that we were locked out of, essentially. So completely. It's an amazing. I'm so looking forward to 2020 and the opportunities that it holds.
Look, we have a lot of work to do now. I know Google, from a product engineering standpoint, this year of a commercial transition, I think concurrently there was a lot of work being done. Gayarthi and team and the product team, the product owners, like we're getting prepared to release things into the market that have been, in some cases, are just great ideas that Google has and everything it knows about the market, but also customers, like things that they've been asking for, because we all believe, even the analysts believe, according to Chip, and we know that the addressable market is really big here. And now that we've done all this underlying sort of foundational work, we can go after it more boldly. So to the degree that you can share, and I know some things are confidential, but what can you tell us about roadmap, whether product or commercial elements that you think that we're going to be able to do now in 2020 and beyond to continue to grow at a clip that I think is deserving of Google's market position and having the best maps platform on the planet?
Yeah, I think that's we've set the foundation and the underpinnings to be able to start to focus on feature functionality benefits that solve solutions, right? And so, while I can't share with you, specific details, it's all around enhancing and bettering the user experience, right? Whether if it's a maps implementation on your website and being able to make it your own, essentially, and have it look and feel and consistent with your site rather than what's out of the box, right? Like, so those are areas that you'll see improvements in the product over time, and some of the benefits you'll see, and then around their specific verticals that Google's involved in. I can't go into too much detail because I don't want to steal the thunder of our marketing teams and product teams as they as they're getting ready to roll these things out. But I'm excited about it because it really allows us to now focus on enhancing our products in the future. Yeah.
Also, ways to utilize that geospatial data. I think data is the new currency. We all know that. And I think in ways, and we're just brainstorming super high level, but how can we bring the power of all of Google and Google Cloud with Maps to do really big and transformational deals with customers that are way beyond the map, right? And,
Absolutely.
I think there's tons of potential there. And I think we have a lot of inventing to do, which is a position we love to be in. Obviously, we love to be on the cutting edge, inventing with you. We have so many customers that can be that voice of, what they need. They're very explicit about that when they're asked the right way. I think what we're going to do with regards to customer success management, account management, to be able to talk to these customers more regularly in a more meaningful and strategic way to surface these requirements, frankly, as I think is going to drive a lot of great joint engagements. And I think it can just be so much bigger. Even the little thing you said about like making a map look different. I mean, I know how long people have been asking for that.
Right.
And we've been like, and it's been like, it hasn't been a priority for years, but now like we're going to be listening to customers and delivering those things. Of course, they're going to be willing and able to pay for those things. And we just want to see like Maps continues to grow at least as fast as all of cloud, all of data, all the like the 30-40% a year that cloud is growing in aggregate. Geospatial Maps data should absolutely grow at least as fast in our view, and I think with the renewed focus it can.
Absolutely. And I think if you look at it from the standpoint of where our focus is going to be from an engineering and product standpoint, the focus is really, as you point, is around the data itself, right? Like, so Maps, you look around and it's been democratized, it's been commoditized, right? Like if you look at how many Maps providers are out there, it's not really a unique. Back in 2005, different story. It's unique, it's different, etc. And there's not a lot of providers. Now, there's a multitude of providers who are doing essentially the same thing, right? And so really the difference, which Google is uniquely poised to do, is around the data about information, etc. We're able to leverage our massive ad networks where there's millions of advertisers and where there's tons of information around their store hours and what amenities
traffic
they have,
patterns in the store. When is it busy?
Exactly.
When is it not busy?
All those sorts of things that Google is uniquely positioned for. And so how we work in conjunction with our customers to deliver that information is I think the difference.
I don't know. I want to think that everyone's gotten good at the basics, but have you used Amazon Prime now? I don't know. I can't tell where the driver is. I can't tell where I think it's a mess. So I think we should cold call on Amazon Prime now and tell them to use Google.
Yeah.
We can help them with that experience because it's really bad.
Yeah. No, I hear you. There's definitely a lot of companies that can utilize the technology a bit better.
We call it like it's good enough. When it's not Google Maps, it's like good enough maps. It's good enough, close enough. So look, we can't grow the TAM without field coverage. We can't do it without people, the right people in the right markets, energized around the task at hand, who are consultative, who can get deep with customers, who are themselves not transactional like you don't expect your partners to be. And so you've had to do a lot of hiring.
Right.
And we met a bunch of them today. Most remote and a mix of remote and in person. We're going to get to know a lot of them even more intimately in the months and quarters to come. But you have a big role, arguably the biggest role of your career. A lot of the ethos, the culture, the DNA, and ultimately the performance of Maps in America is on your shoulders. I want to pivot a little bit to your leadership style, hiring. What do you look for? How do you get outsized performance from the teams, and how do you build the best teams, best operating teams to begin with. And I think you've learned a lot watching some great people. You've been around, all sorts of leaders. I'm sure that's influenced you to some extent, but what's your philosophy around leadership in general?
Yeah, I think, from a standpoint of, first of all, the hiring piece that you mentioned, Tony, like we have an amazing infrastructure, as you well know, in terms of just the framework in terms of hiring and looking at the 4 attributes that we hire for externally, around Googliness, leadership, general cognitive ability, those 4 attributes. And so, there's that framework that we utilize to be able to essentially vet the right candidate, right, for us. And so we're maniacal in terms of the process there, and we run all our candidates through that same process. So we have a baseline in which we're looking at those candidates and comparing them. So I think for the most part, it's served us well, and we continue to utilize that framework in terms of hiring. So we lean on that pretty heavily. With regards to leadership style, for me specifically, putting yourself in somebody's shoes, not only putting yourself in somebody's shoes, but actually truly trying to understand, their challenges, their opportunities, etc., and putting yourself in their shoes, I think leads to being able to get the maximum productivity out of somebody, right? Like to be able to realize and genuinely understand where they're coming from. I always use the other phrase of leading from behind. I like to, when I look at my style and just a very low key sort of approach to things, but I also want to be able to foster and support the folks that I work with, right?
Yeah.
Like, so being able to say, and when I say lead from behind, giving them the opportunity, the safe environment in which to make decisions, to take chances, etc., and know that I'll be there to support them in any way I can. Also, as part of that, giving them the credit and praise because they've done all the work, right?
Yeah.
So giving them that safe environment in which they can operate and be as successful as possible is the style that I personally enjoy myself and expect, and I think others respond to it as well. So those are I would say the 2 foundations in which I try to lead by.
It's amazing how much consistency there is in like the philosophy of most of the leaders I admire. I read a lot of books on the subject. I study management science and art. I'm reading Multipliers now, and Multipliers is great from that standpoint. It really kind of outlines orders of magnitude impact they can get in terms of harnessing and elevating collective intelligence by creating safe environments, by leading from behind, as you described it. Every year, I have never led a company this big and have never had this many people on a team, like every year.
Right.
So after 19 or 20 years, it's become sort of second nature for me, an expectation of myself that I have to continue to evolve,
right,
in how I think about leadership. And some of the things you said, it resonates with me so much, because like when you're a small business and you're an entrepreneur and you also are used to wearing many hats, everything's sort of like you lead everything. Everything's about you. You kind of are in a hurry, so you bulldoze over everything, and like leadership development and on culture, like maybe not always top of mind, but every day I try to get a little better at empowering teams.
Right. Like
this practice of being last to speak is really hard for me, but really important. And I think I let some of that be demonstrated in the QBR just now, and I was just like watching there, kind of with pride.
Yes.
How well Edric did in that audience for the first time. Jacob, of course, Noah, the new guy in the room, right, introducing a new concept for this organization. But I'm really proud when we can do that and have all this talent, regardless of how long they've been here, elevate to a new level. Right. But I think that's how future leaders are made. Yeah. And that's how we scale ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, to your point, when as we had this QBR earlier today and looking in the room, and even for the new folks that have joined my team, our team, they come up with new and insightful ideas and really challenge myself. And that's what you want as a leader, frankly, like, to come into a room and think you have all the answers, it's probably because you don't, don't have all the answers.
Right. It's insecurity.
Yeah, exactly. And so, from my perspective, and I look around and, I'm super excited about the team that we're building and that have joined in the last month or two. They're all exceptional, and they all will make me a better person, a better leader, and a better Googler.
Oh, you have a great now composition of people that have been there a long time, sold maps for a long time, we've known for a long time, merged with a bunch of people that are completely new to maps, to your org. And first of all, what my team has told me, like the feedback on all the new talent coming in, you've really done an exceptional job of picking from all sorts of places, whether it's ads or cloud or Salesforce or wherever.
Right.
You've really set the bar high, but I think they're going to be, benefiting tremendously from coming in and working with Kyle and Raleigh and Paul and Natasha and everyone else who's like Dave Freeberg, right?
Foundation,
who's been there for a long time. That's a lot of our teams look like that because we are also growing. So we have a bunch of new people with a bunch of people who've been here a long time. Our executive team looks like that. So when that culture works and you create this sort of one team mentality, the collective intelligence is amplified because the people who've been here a long time learn a bunch of new things, and the people who are new get fast tracked in terms of like the foundational knowledge. But within a couple of months, I think they have a good basis by which to suggest how things could be different, and kind of demonstrate by data and experience how they may have some great ideas.
Yeah, exactly. I think that all those things are spot on. And in addition, I would say, as I worked with your team in the past and ours as well, is the humility aspect of it, where you don't approach thinking, okay, well, I've been here for 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, whatever the case may be, and really understand like we all could get better. We're all learning, and we can learn from each other and come at it from a humility standpoint. That was another thing actually Chip had mentioned in the past and continues to reinforce. And I think we do that organically as teams. So it's great, from that standpoint.
Yeah. Look, I think 5-6 years ago, again, we were small, we were scrappy, we were successful, and we weren't always, as self-aware around elements of humility and just sort of like just growing up and being mature and understanding those things. And it was a bunch of, scrappy young people who were probably way too successful too fast. That kind of created this culture for a short period of time that was not always rooted in humility and gratitude and things like that. But again, I credit you personally on having a great influence on me, but also our team on just keeping us honest about those things. And I think part of it is like, you have a couple of years on me, but in some ways, like being at a large enterprise for a longer period of time than I, like being within Google and seeing 500 employees to over 100,000, like you understand what it takes to operate at enterprise class. And we just come from different roots, and your influence like that was very meaningful to me, and I probably wouldn't be where I am today without that kind of influence. So
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for being that positive voice, that positive mentor for me personally and for our team, because everything you've ever said, I know, speaking of trust, has always had like the best intentions, was completely honest, and I could trust, like it landed with gravity. That Francisco thinks this, holy shit, like that means something, as opposed to, a random opinion where it's coming from a place that you don't know where it's coming from, where from you, I knew it was always coming from the best possible place. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So we got a lot of work to do. I'm only half kidding about the pre-commit, I think we should work something out. I would love to sign something and make a huge amount of noise around that, especially as you turn on your new marketing and air cover, your new channel program initiatives, new messaging to customers, to really reinforce SADA's position as the leader globally in this space, and to continue to earn that, put a stake in the ground. I think working out the commercial arrangements or along those to just set a really big target together,
right,
would be really, really exciting for me, and super cool to execute with you over the next 5 years plus.
Yeah, we're definitely open to have that conversation. As you've heard throughout the day, we've pivoted. We're an enterprise organization. We have some audacious goals from the standpoint of revenue ourselves, and I can't think of a better partner, obviously, than SADA to be able to have these conversations. Again, I thank you for everything you meant to me personally, as well as your leadership style within your organization has been amazing. That's a testimony to the growth that you've already achieved, and I know will continue. I just think that the sky's the limit for us as an organization, as partners. So thank you for that. I agree.
Thanks so much for being my guest.
Thank you.
And I will see you soon in your headquarters, and we'll get together with Chip and do some big thinking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks so much, man. It was great to see you.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you for listening to Cloud and Clear. Check the show notes for links to this week's topics. And don't forget to connect with us on Twitter @Cloud and Clear and our website, sada.com. Be sure to rate and review the show on your favorite podcast app.